Hi, Mickey. What's
Hey,
that
Bob?
you're holding up there? Is that some kind of
It's
detector?
a thermometer.
Oh, it's a thermometer. You're holding it up to your forehead. Oh, do you have a temperature? You're getting a reading.
I have a 97.1. Not so impressive.
No.
But, like everybody else I know, I'm worried that I am a breakthrough case, Bob.
Well, you're probably not. Although we have learned that there are a lot of those. I mean, the efficacy rate of, I think it's, of like Pfizer, Moderna vaccines, maybe Pfizer, they're now saying is more like 50-60% against Delta.
42.
42? That's just, where is that from? That's just one study.
Well, it's one study, but it's a study.
Yeah, but you're picking the most depressing study.
Yeah, that's the lowest one that's around. One of us said this was going to happen. The conventional wisdom on the vaccines is now, breakthroughs are really rare. If you're vaxxed, the breakthrough is really rare. But let's face it, we're all going to get this at some point. Okay. And there's a certain contradiction between those two, right? If the vaccine is so fucking effective, why are we all going to get it at some point?
I haven't heard. You mean the same people have been saying both of those things?
I've been seeing authorities who are the responsible people who are saying everybody should get vaxxed, which I agree with. Also they try to cling to this rare business at the same, because they don't want to admit that the vax might not be perfect, which is stupid. At the same time as they sort of say, they go to the opposite extreme and say, well, we're all going to get it. We're going to meet the virus. That's the euphemism. We're going to meet the virus at some point.
Like meet the parents?
And we want to get it as late as possible because there'll be therapeutics and et cetera, et cetera. And that it will slow down the growth of variants.
So meet the virus, what does that mean exactly?
I don't know what it means. It might mean that the virus tries to infect you, or it might mean that you're actually infected by it. It's a vague word. It was used in this very good, I think, David Wallace Wells piece in the New York Magazine that basically said, look, let's drop this bullshit about how the virus is rare. I'm still holding out that I'm still trying not to get it. I mean, I want to be the last guy who doesn't get it because there are all these studies showing it does brain damage, and fuck, I need all the brain I can get.
I was going to point that out. It's, yeah, I mean, I don't think it's all that hard to not get it. You just have to stay in your lush Beverly Hills home and talk to people like me on Zoom. And, you know,
I'd rather have brain damage.
Abandon your wild ways.
No, I'm chafing at that. I don't know if I could take that.
Plus, there'd be a lot of disappointed people out there who are, you know, currently indulging in your wild ways with you.
Well, Bob, one day the cold open is going to be me as Hunter Biden, or have I already done that?
I think you have.
But it's going to be.
I think you've done the thermometer one, by the way.
I think I've done the
I
thermometer
have bad news.
one, too.
I think the virus has already done its brain damage.
No, I knew that I'd done it already, but it was irrelevant. But the Hunter Biden one could be more elaborate. I could have an actual prostitute and a Russian spy, and, you know, I'll be in a hot tub. So don't talk about my wild ways. But
speaking of which,
I have to go to the market, right? I still have to go to the market, and there'll be some big burly guy talking in a guttural foreign language right next to my face. Okay?
I knew we'd get to immigration sooner or later.
No, it's not
I
immigration.
just didn't know how many subjects lay between COVID and immigration.
Some languages, especially the languages that are around here, which is, I'm not talking about Spanish.
Right.
I'm talking about Middle Eastern and some sort of Slavic languages where they have these guttural outbursts, are obviously more effective at spreading the virus than people who talk in with more mellifluous, non-guttural Latin languages. It's just clear. Anyway, there are people who are next to you in the market who will talk right to your face because they think it's over, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So the safety you had of everybody being paranoid has gone away.
No, I think it's the virus spreading foreign accents that I most fear when I leave the house.
Look, the Israeli government has said Israelis' potential for loud talking, they should cut it out, okay?
Okay.
It's an officially recognized penchant for loud talking.
Okay.
Which is on display in my neighborhood quite often.
Now, I will say there was a study that came out confirming what we had said, but it's always nice to have it confirmed. It kind of had to be the case that in areas, in countries where they have the lower vaccination rates, they have the higher virus mutation rates, the faster creation of new variants.
Right, but that
has now
didn't
been empirically
seal the deal, because what I think what people like, dare I say, Brett Weinstein are worried about, and I don't listen to his podcast, is they're not worried about the number of variants, but that those variants that happen will be specifically tailored to survive in an environment where people are vaccinated. So that study you cite doesn't prove the opposite, but doesn't show that the variants, it doesn't show that the risk of a vax-evading variant has been reduced.
No, it doesn't show that.
It has, but
it doesn't show that. But I wouldn't say the Brett Weinsteins of the world aren't concerned with the number of variants created. He would concede that is a very important fact that weighs in principle in favor of vaccines. He has other doubts about vaccines, but you're right. The other question is, does the vaccine select for vaccine-resistant variants? In some sense, it has to, but we haven't, and then the question is, as we've said, we've had this discussion. The question is, but how do those variants affect A, unvaccinated people, and B, people with organic immunity? In other words, people who've had the disease. One thing I realized is that the vaccine, I'm too unclear on this to go on. I think I'll stop. But maybe I'll attempt this in the Parrot Room.
It's good when you're confused, Bob. If you state your confusion clearly, that's very
I think I'm so confused, I'm not even sure I can do that, but I will try it, in the Parrot Room. What I will say is, speaking of Brett Weinstein, he's had a little more bad news. He is championing ivermectin both as a therapy and as a prophylactic. And a study came out on the question of its value as a therapy that was apparently one of the better designed studies so far. Double blind, randomized, 1,500 people. That's a lot. And it showed no effect whatsoever on rate of hospitalization.
I haven't seen a lot of pushback to that. It seems to have been accepted. Am I wrong?
The university did it. McMaster in Canada is a totally legit university. It was done, I think, in Brazil. Oh, it seems solid. Now, there is separately the question of prophylactic effect. But even there, one thing I realized, or I heard it from somebody, and apparently it's true, is that, one thing Brett keeps saying is, look, ivermectin, it's kind of can't lose, because we know it's been used so much as an antiparasitic over the years that we know it's safe. But actually, we don't, because apparently when it's used as an antiparasitic, it's used like once every 3 months or something. And to use it as a prophylactic, you have to use it once a week, like forever. And I think there's basically no data on that whatsoever. Right. So it's, I wouldn't know. I'm not ruling out. The studies are still kind of all over the place. I would not completely rule out that they wind up showing some prophylactic effect or some value as a therapy. But I also heard this pretty knowledgeable seeming guy say that a big part of the evidence Brett and company cite on the prophylactic side is just bullshit, because when they point to these provinces in India where they used ivermectin, he says like the percentage of people who actually used it was like 2-3%. There's no way that could account for the things that Brett is claiming.
Somebody on my Twitter feed said Scope mouthwash is prophylactic.
Specifically for this?
No, that it has some chemical that it's also in a lot of other mouthwashes that kills germs in your throat. And hey, this is a germ in your throat, so you want to kill as many of them as possible. What do I know? There are two other issues. One is there's a lot of fuss about Florida being a hot spot, and the cases are going up in Florida, but the deaths have turned a corner and have started to plummet. This is inexplicable to me because deaths are supposed to lag, and here they seem to be proceeding. So I just don't know what to make of this. One obvious possibility is that DeSantis is fudging the numbers because he's under political attack. But if that isn't happening, then what the hell is happening?
Yeah, I saw that. It seems there was somewhere else where death seemed to be no longer the lagging indicator. It's hard to say. I mean, now in Britain, the thing that I was concerned about, it seemed like the descent of the caseload had stopped and had plateaued, and it's kind of gently rising, so that's kind of concerning.
I guess it's possible that Florida has a lot of old people, so a high death rate, and maybe it's picked off all the easy targets, and so the death rate is falling because there's nobody left to kill.
Could well be. Could be that it's now spreading among younger people. You know, one thing about all of the, you've seen these various stories about kind of purporting to nail down the connection between vaccination rate and how fast the disease is spreading. I'm sure there is a relationship, but at the same time, these stories about how, well, if you look at the 10 states where it's spreading fastest, those are also, very low in vaccination. I mean, there is this confounding variable, which is that the southern states have low vaccination rates, and the southern states are also where it's very hot and people are using air conditioning and staying indoors. So
right, the weather is sort of always overlooked as a potential variable. Everybody says, well, it's concentrated in the South. Well, that could be because the South is a lot hotter than anywhere else. I mean,
what happened last summer? The South had a bad spell last summer as well, and that was one purported explanation.
The other thing that's happening in Florida, and I think in another state I looked at, is that the RO number is falling. It's below 1 now in Florida.
Oh, well, that's what you want.
Which is what you want, but how does that jibe with the cases increasing?
In theory, those two things I think are incompatible. The definition of an R naught less than 1 is that basically cases have to be decreasing because each person who gets it is infecting less than one person, right?
I guess, but if there are enough, if there's such a massive number of cases that even at a less than, they have to be decreasing.
Right. That's why it's a critical threshold.
I mean, if you look at the curve, it's going up and it looks like it's about to go back down, if you squint and look at it the right way. But so maybe they're compatible.
Well,
but,
if you squint at the national curves right now, look at the 7-day rolling averages of the last few days, you can start to imagine that the slope is decreasing.
Right.
And the slope of our case spike per capita not gotten nearly as steep as Britain's got. And so I don't know. There's a lot of confounding stuff, I guess, is the. Is DeSantis?
How do you think Biden is doing?
Well, I was going to ask one more. You mean on COVID or?
I have one more point to make too. I
have a COVID politics question. Like, where do you think DeSantis is headed with this? He seems locked into his position on COVID, and could that come back to haunt him? Is what I'm.
Well, his major initiative now is to, and it seems like a good initiative, is to make treatment available. So what's that treatment that Trump got the
Regeneron, the antibodies?
He's making Regeneron and the other one available to everybody, and he's making a big push to give it to people.
Is the government paying for it? Regeneron's expensive.
I assume the government is paying for it.
Huh.
Anyway, this is his this is his big push, I assume, to counteract this image that he's happy to see his people die. And so I think that's his reaction. I sort of like DeSantis. I don't like the sort of adversarial Trump stance, which I guess he feels he has to take. I have a feeling behind the Trumpism, there's actually a competent governor there.
Could be.
So that's the reaction that I saw of him. He's going to give everybody Regeneron who has it.
And speaking of Trump, would-be Trumps, I just have to read a comment from the Blogging Head site. We have several comment streams. There's the Blogging Head site, there's YouTube, and then there is the Parrot Room. Well, this is from the Blogging Head site, and here we go. Here's the comment. Mickey frequently mentions his, quote, good friend, unquote, Ryan Girdusky. How do you say it? Girdusky?
I think it's Girdusky.
Okay, but neglected the news this week. He's saying you neglected this news. Neglected the news this week that Girdusky is getting $15,000 per month from JD Vance to promote him on Twitter. Girdusky never disclosed it, of course. It's too bad Mickey has to protect his fellow right-wing buddy and won't address this, given his fawning over Vance. Gullible Bob won't bring it up either. Cowardly show, guys.
Well, that story's 2 weeks old, I think, and I knew Ryan was consulting for Vance. I don't think he's getting paid. This is the key distinction. I don't, and I think he should disclose it. Although there's as he points out, there's a limit to how much you can disclose in the little bio that nobody reads anyway. But he's not being paid to tweet. He doesn't tweet about Vance that much. He's the most overpaid person in America. If he tweets 3 times a week about Vance and gets paid $15,000 a month, he's a consultant. He's giving the guy advice. And he's there in Ohio, and he's a political consultant. That's what he does for a living. He should disclose it. It's different. I kept thinking back to the Howard Dean campaign, because I did think it was a scandal when it turned out Dean was paying these bloggers to blog about him. And the difference there is the bloggers were really influential. They had huge followings, and they really went to pains to hide the money. In this case, Ryan's tweets, he has 3 or 4 tweets a week. He doesn't have that big a following. They're not influencing anything. Yes, he should disclose, but it's not such a big deal. And he's not being paid to tweet.
This comment is not entirely accurate. You're saying he's not, well, he's being paid to promote him on Twitter in a sense, maybe, but not via his own account.
No, he likes Vance. Yeah. So he goes to work for him. He gets paid for the work, and he also promotes him on Twitter. Yes, probably he's expected to say nice things about Vance on Twitter, but that's really that's just a byproduct of these other things. But he is getting paid by Vance, so that does color your perception sometimes. And he should disclose it. But I just don't think it's a big deal. You don't know how much I'm getting paid by Vance, Bob.
To promote whatever you're promoting on this show?
Right. I didn't have time to set up my shrine, but the shrine is back in business because sorry?
Your JD Vance shrine.
My JD Vance shrine, because he's gaining in the polls. He's at 12. The frontrunner Mandela's at 20. The PAC, it's a large PAC, or they're all at 7. So everybody's within striking distance of Mandel, and he's only slightly ahead of the
nobody
PAC.
else has Peter Thiel giving him $10 million, right? He's probably
giving it to a super PAC that is an independent expenditure.
That is him, basically, right? It's a super PAC that does ads on his behalf.
Right, but that's not as effective as giving money to actually to the campaign, which is illegal. So that's why Thiel's not doing it. But there's a history of super PACs blowing their wad. The most obvious example was Karl Rove blowing millions and millions of dollars on a stupid campaign in Georgia that failed. Okay, that was an independent. Well,
there's a history of candidates having bad ad campaigns too. I mean,
right, but you want it to be in sync. The danger is they'll be out of sync. The Kerry campaign, there was a huge independent expenditure campaign that actually contradicted some of the things that Kerry said because it's illegal for them to coordinate. And it's hard to believe that they can't coordinate, but sometimes they actually can't.
By the way, there was a Kerry clip circulating, his famous, from when he was in his 20s, I think, and was just back from Vietnam, I guess, but had already somehow turned himself into a national figure and was testifying before Congress and said, "Who wants to be the last man to die for a lost cause?" Whatever the quote is. The famous quote?
Well, nobody in Afghanistan, apparently.
Right. But the famous quote? I mean, what I was going to say was,
yes,
you should listen to that clip. I mean, his accent was totally different. And I don't know if it's like a JFK impersonation or an authentic kind of Brahmin accent, Boston Brahmin accent, or some combination of the two or what, but it's weird. It's not the way he talks now. What's that?
What is it now?
It's got some of that in it, but it wasn't it seemed so much more theatrical back then. I don't know.
Well, with Kerry, the possibility of total phoniness can never be discounted. But it's you would think that somebody who's from Boston would have a Boston accent, and then as he gets older and goes trotting around the globe, it would wear off, right?
Right.
The key thing about Kerry, do you know there's nothing Irish about him?
Oh, I think you told me that. Yeah.
He has no Irish blood.
It's a very Irish sounding name, though. Kerry could be an Irish name.
Correct.
But it's not?
Fake Irish. It's a fake Irish name.
They changed their name?
I think there's a name change at some point. Anyway, he's not Irish. The key thing about Kerry, as always to remember, is he dramatically threw his medal over the wall, and he threw somebody else's medal over the wall. He kept his own medal. So that's all you need to know about John Kerry. We've digressed. Dwight Garner will be pleased. But I had one more point to make about the virus, which is that all these stories that are saying, like in Axios, the Pfizer protection is only like 42%, okay? Is the vaccine wearing off over time? And then they have Pfizer officials saying maybe the vaccine wears off over time. And they have Biden officials saying we're worried about the vaccine wearing off over time. But they never confront the possibility that it's not wearing off over time. It was just never any good against the Delta variant. And they're purposely hiding. I'm paranoid about it. They're purposely hiding that possibility on these ridiculous sort of, we can't say anything about the vax grounds, that they want people to think, I'm taking a potent vaccine that will last me for 6 months and then it might fade, or 5 months. I'm not taking a vaccine that's really not that good against the Delta variant. But that's entirely possible that it's just not that good against the Delta variant.
Well, a lot of people are casting it that way. I don't know what the administration's saying, but it's not as if this is like secret knowledge that this to some extent reflects its effectiveness against Delta.
Right, but this story hid that possibility. That's what that led me to what paranoid speculation.
Well, it could well be a combination of the two. I mean, they have said it may wane after 6 months or so.
Well, sure, but this is a press story. I'm saying that the Axios is towing the administration line, and the administration once again has decided the American people can't handle the truth, which is the vaccine isn't that good against Delta. They have to pretend the vaccine is like Superman, and you're an idiot not to take it. You're still an idiot not to take it because, it still protects against death. It just doesn't protect as well against infection. But They can't say that. They feel that American people are too stupid to understand that.
Yeah, their messaging has left things to be desired at times. I agree.
It's applying like political PR, theory to the epidemic, which is wrong. They shouldn't do that. They've gotten into trouble time and again doing that, and they should just cut it out. Anyway, what can I say?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I assume their rationale is we would indeed be better off if more people had been vaccinated. In fact, if we had, if the uptake of the vaccine had been as high as it could have been, given the supply of vaccines, we might well be in a totally different world now. It may be that the reason now it's starting to look like maybe, autumn isn't going to be what we thought it was, which is everybody going back to school and blah, 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 is because of these people who resisted the vaccination. That's quite plausible. And I would be the last person to point out how many of those people have an ideological affinity with you, because that would be like hitting below the belt.
That would be hitting below the belt. But the question is, do you win these people over by being honest or by telling them, like, it's exactly equivalent to saying, look, we haven't seen any evidence the election was phony. Biden got all these votes. He won, versus saying, you must admit that this was the freest and fairest election. And people just say, no, fuck you. Okay? So now they're saying to Biden, no, fuck you. And if he pursued a different strategy, he would at least get half of them, which would make a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm just saying this is probably their rationale. They think we're trying to get people vaccinated. Obviously, the people not vaccinated are, in their mind, not that great at assessing evidence and reaching rational conclusions. So you treat them like kids and tell them, whatever it takes. I guess that's the way they're thinking. I'm
sure that's exactly their thinking. Yeah. And if you watch the movie Muscle Shoals, which we will talk about in the Parrot Room,
which we will,
it drives home the point that no, people really aren't that stupid. Sorry. Anyway, one of the points it drives home. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about the virus.
So when you ask,
obviously they're denying that all these migrants pouring across the border who are testing 40% positive in some areas for the virus, they have no effect. I mean, how could that have any effect?
No, but I will say, Mickey, if you look at the map that shows kind of the red counties, you don't see this continuous swath from borderlands to the deep south. In fact, there isn't like a path of red.
You're right. If you look at the map, you think migration doesn't look like the major source of the virus. Right. There are counties along the border, like around El Paso and in the Rio Grande Valley, that are bright red. And of course, they do ship these the people who are sick all over the country to different hospitals, and they migrate to where the jobs are. But still, it is so heavily concentrated in the southern states that some other factors at work. Is it the unvaxxed? Is it the weather? Who knows? But yes, I agree with that.
What else? When you ask, how do I think Biden's doing? You were talking about with respect to COVID, or more generally
with the virus. Everybody's saying, oh, his favorability is going down, even as he wins his bipartisan infrastructure plan in the Senate. And everybody sort of seems to be assuming it's because the virus is coming back. And to what extent is that really his fault? Is he getting an unfair rap? Is he supposed to command the virus to go away? I mean, what is he doing wrong aside from this PR business that we just talked about?
Well, presidents always get credit and blame in unfair ways. I mean, they get, they're thought responsible for the economy, which they mainly aren't. That's life in the White House. Deal with it.
No, I guess that's the conclusion. But he did declare mission accomplished in a way he didn't have to. And so they obviously had this very pat idea that the virus was going away and they would, everything would be great and they'd pass their bills and they would, surge in popularity. And reality did not conform to their simple plan. And it was probably stupid to have a simple plan that you wishfully hoped was going to happen.
Yeah, the Declaration of Independence from the virus may have been premature.
Did he really say that?
Did you see that? What's that?
Did he really say Declaration?
I think he said it on Independence Day, didn't he? It was a big deal. I mean, it was kind of up there. Fortunately, he didn't have a banner that said mission accomplished behind him. But aside from that, the parallels are eerie. Did you see that Moderna already has a vaccine tailored to the Delta virus? But it's got to go through it's got to go through the testing. It's got to do phase 3 trials and shit. I mean, I really think, first of all, I think it should start working on Lambda, like pronto. It probably is. And I really think we have to consider the possibility of giving Americans the option of taking some risk if they want to take a vaccine that is fundamentally like the vaccines that are out there, right? It's an mRNA vaccine that I assume targets a spike. I'm not sure about this part, but I'm guessing it may just target a different kind of spike or something. Who knows? But if it's fundamentally, like these now pretty well-tested mRNA vaccines, I say, and, you would think in principle, this would get support on the right. Let Americans choose. Give them the freedom.
Here's a stupid question.
Yeah.
Suppose everybody takes this vaccine and Delta disappears. Does that just open the door for Lambda to come in and infect everybody?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, in other words, would the kinds of antibodies that have been aroused by the vaccine be worse at handling Lambda than your immune system would have been if we had just not tampered with it to begin with? I mean, that's kind of like, it's the specific version of the generic question about vaccine-resistant viruses. I don't know enough.
What seems to happen is Delta, everywhere everywhere they're both in the same country, Delta outcompetes Lambda. Okay, so Lambda doesn't spread.
Wait, is that true? Is that a fact?
I've seen that in studies of South America, and that's why Lambda hasn't just taken over. But if Delta stops outcompeting Lambda, then why isn't the royal road to infection open for Lambda?
I think I guess the scenario.
The question you said.
Well, is Lambda more lethal or something? What is Lambda?
It's vaccine resistant, more vaccine resistant.
It's more resistant than Delta to the vaccine.
Yes.
I wonder if it's less resistant to this new Delta vaccine than to the regular vaccine. That would be worth knowing.
Yeah.
Well, where are we here? I don't know enough to continue this conversation.
Right. Now, I have very alarmed interesting
questions
about Lambda, and then I sort of waned because people are saying, well, Delta is bad enough, but keep it in the back of your head that, there are these other variants out there.
Yeah.
We have a whole bunch of stuff we could talk about. We could talk about Cuomo. I don't have that much to say about him. We should probably, after talking about this, we should probably have some sex before we get to the exciting topic of infrastructure.
Wait, did you just say we should have some sex?
We should talk about sex. I did say we should have some sex, but I misspoke.
You can do both at once,
As Hunter
Jeffrey,
Biden is...
As Jeffrey Tubin... What, is that what you're going to say? As Jeffrey Tubin...
No, Hunter Biden has proven... there's this bizarre new tape of Hunter Biden with a prostitute in bed, and in the middle of sex, he starts talking about how these Russians have stolen his laptop, and the prostitute he's having sex with asks these questions that are like much better than any reporter for the White House press corps would ask. The prostitute says, well, are you worried about being blackmailed by the Russians? and Hunter goes off with some riff, and then the prostitute goes, please continue with your story. It's like,
well, she is obviously a Russian plant.
Right. Right. So
I'm kidding, but you never know.
She's probably a member of the Politburo. I mean, but does that mean that they fake the evidence or that they just use Russians to entrap him? I don't know. Anyway.
There's video of this, you're saying?
I think there's video. It's reported in the European press, and the American press, of course, is blacking it out because it obviously the reason is that it's such a sore spot with Biden that he would just go berserk. And I think they're actually worried that he might lose it on national TV and completely discredit himself. I mean, why are they so reticent? It's bizarre.
Wait, so reticent to do what?
Bringing up the subject of Hunter and his shenanigans and
well,
the various
it's resistance residue because it's because Trump is still public enemy number one, and this is a way of not asking about Hunter is a way of not playing Trump's game.
But they ask Biden other tough questions about what about this, what about that?
Yeah, but this is a specific
policy questions.
This is a Trump question, though. This is a playing into Trump's hands question in a very specific way.
But I think
some people think it's not. I mean, that you could reach a judgment that it's just kind of not fair game. Now, if you think that there was bribery and corruption that reached Biden himself, that's one thing. But in terms of your son is smoking crack with Russian prostitutes or whatever he's doing, there's some people who just think That's not a fair question. I can see that point of view. Your job is to cover the politician as a politician.
Biden clearly loves his son. So if his son is compromised by the Russians, and they have tape that, although it's hard to believe how he could be humiliated more, but they have the laptop, okay? Mm-hmm. And they have this laptop, and maybe it compromises Joe, but it definitely might compromise Hunter.
I think we've heard everything on it.
If that's true, why isn't that a legitimate line of question? I think the press, I think there's a certain amount of patriotism here. The press thinks it is like a nuclear weapon. And if you use it, Biden might just explode. He reacts viciously and emotionally every time you mention it. It's a hot button. And they don't want to push that button because they don't know what'll happen.
Well, that's an interesting theory, too. They're afraid of the Hunter button. I would say, I mean, in terms of like what there could be on the laptop, I think we know pretty much the most damning stuff about Biden himself that could be on the laptop. I mean, this was in the possession of Rudy Giuliani for weeks and weeks.
This is another
laptop. He kind of showed us his highlight. Wait, there's a second laptop?
It's a third laptop, Bob.
Oh, geez, come on.
No,
this is ridiculous.
There are 3 laptops. This is the third laptop.
And somebody got a hold of all of them?
No, the Russians, in this tape, he is saying the Russians have a third one. Now, is the whole tape fake? I don't know how would you fake Hunter Biden?
It's a deep fake.
Maybe it's a deep fake.
It's a deep fake sex tape.
We need to find this prostitute and get her into the White House press briefing room.
Into the Parrot Room. You talk about your business model.
Tough questions finally for a
We need to either get an exclusive interview with her in the Parrot Room or at least get our hands on some Hunter Biden videos to show in the Parrot Room. At patreon.com/Parrot Room, folks. These things may happen there. We don't know. They may. Any given Friday, this shit the Parrot Room just may be Hunter, wall-to-wall Hunter, sex, drugs.
How did I get off on this Hunter jet?
I don't know. You have a tendency to do that. It's kind of like immigration and child credit. Oh, that reminds me. You saw the census data. Not only are whites declining proportionally, the actual raw number of whites in America has declined. Now, I wonder to what extent is this people with some degree of mixed ancestry now deciding they don't want to be thought of as white and claiming mixed ancestry. But
I've seen that theory, and even proponents of the theory say it can't explain all of it, although you never know. The proponents of the theory may be using it to thump for natalism. Oh, I know what. Okay, I know how I got off on the tangent. I'll go take a tangent to go back to the original topic. And this will get rid of the JD Vance subject.
Excellent.
One of my readers, I've been worried that he's off on this natalist jag. He wants more births, and this census would just play into that, right? The declining whites, so that he would hit the subliminal button among white voters that, gee, we need to have more babies, despite the fact that none of these child credit schemes has much effect on however many babies you have. But and it's a worldwide phenomenon, blah, blah, blah. But one of my readers commented on Twitter, he went and saw JD Vance at a small group in Ohio, and he didn't mention natalism. He mentioned the obvious issues: immigration, inflation, critical race theory, and there was one other, and so it was a very sensible. Actually, on the stump, it was a very sensible campaign, which is why I was going to resurrect my JD Vance shrine. Anyway, so that's that's JD Vance.
Well, as long as we're on the subject of Trumpists, there's this little Tucker Carlson item. He says that the NSA has been spying on him and is planning to leak whatever they found. Now, to me, this means one of two things. Either the NSA actually has been spying on him, or he's making it up but knows that something damaging about him is going to be leaked, which I find a kind of appetizing prospect. Don't you think the latter is a real possibility?
I tell you, I work for the guy, right? Yep. And I know people who know him and like him. I have never heard anything. There's no scuttlebutt the way there is scuttlebutt about some people.
You mean there aren't damaging disclosures out there?
I've heard no rumblings of them. I'm the last to know in many cases. So, but he seems to be a devoted family man.
I'm not. Who knows what the nature of? I'm not saying it's about sex.
I mean, when has a guy that good looking with that much star power been a devoted family man? But he sure seems that way.
Could be, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of temptation out there in stardom land, Mickey. Take it from me. It takes steely resolve to resist all the temptation. I've seen your steely resolve
at work, Bob.
Have you?
When you're surrounded by these cooing admirers.
Right. I mean, I just act as if they're not there.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, if you see some damaging stuff come out, here's what I would say. If you do see damaging leaks about Hunter, it probably means this was a lie, because now that he said this, the NSA probably wouldn't leak it if they have it. And so if it does leak, then theory B is operative, which is that this is a preemptive lie on his part.
But if he has in fact bottled it up, that's a brilliant strategy that other people should try.
It's a smart strategy either way. He's a smart guy, and as you noted, good looking too.
And a family man.
And a fine American. Is he still in Hungary? Has he come back?
No, I think he's back.
Good. We need him. We need him in America.
I mean, I'm not saying he's a perfect person, as you know, but I'd never heard that. One more point in the census, which is usually a census report like this is followed by a flurry of articles, the thesis of which is basically, ha ha, you white people, you're doomed. Ha ha, the Democrats are ascendant, Republicans are doomed. And I think the MSM, the mainstream press, has realized this wasn't such a good strategy, because it basically confirms all the paranoid fears of the people who are now allegedly doomed to be in a minority. And it actually is not, it doesn't just allude to replacement theory, it is replacement theory. And I think that's tamped down with the mild exception of William Fry, Brookings demographer, who's always pushing this bullshit.
Well, I also think there's more awareness that a growing proportion of ethnic minorities does not translate into Democratic support as naturally as or automatically as was once thought.
But they still think it. I'm sure they still in their hearts think it translates, and it's either more Democratic or less Democratic. And it's obviously more Democratic than not. But you're right. There is the phenomenon of the last election where the trend seemed to be that blacks and Latinos were losing their.
I mean, also they probably, some people realize that crowing over this would only accelerate these Republican state level attempts to make it harder to vote make it especially harder to vote for the kinds of people who vote Democratic. And there are a number of those initiatives.
But I can't believe that the Democrats actually think they're going to win or lose the election on the basis of the 0.00001% of vote difference between voting plan A and voting plan B. Well, I mean, Texas just passed their voting plan, okay? Everybody's now going to forget it because it's completely irrelevant to the actual outcome of the election.
What do you mean it's irrelevant? Aren't there some things with that of actual consequence in it?
No, the only really scary stuff is can the Republicans basically throw out the results of the election? In terms of
that sounds like a big one.
Yeah, but they're not going to have the balls to do that. The theory, if they had actually eliminated all mail-in ballots, that might have a big effect, but they didn't do that. They eliminated 24 hours.
No, but this is a scary thing, and I don't know what the status is in various states, but these initiatives to empower the state legislature, which tends to be Republican in these states, to basically overrule election results.
I think they took that out of the Texas bill.
Well, there are other states that are still floating.
It might still be in the Georgia bill, but I think they took it out of the Texas bill.
Yeah.
So anyway, The Democratic paranoia about Republican voting schemes seems completely manufactured, as you know, I think, to get rid of the filibuster so they can do other things like pass an amnesty. Anyway.
So before this is over, we should probably talk about Afghanistan and maybe infrastructure and a little about Cuomo.
I can give a very quick thing about infrastructure, but let's talk about Afghanistan first.
Okay, so do you want to chide those of us who have been advocating withdrawal?
Well, we've both been advocating withdrawal.
Yeah. So I thought you were already starting to try to erase that fact about your past.
No, I just, there's withdrawal and there's humiliation, and we seem to be on the track for Plan B.
Okay, but I would say, I mean, obviously, a lot of bad things are going to follow from Taliban being in charge of more and more territory, quite possibly all of it before long. You're getting reports, some summary executions. You're getting reports of women being forced to marry Taliban. In other words, basically rape. Taliban's denying this, but I'm sure at least some of both of these things are going on. So there's a lot of terrible stuff, but if you've been paying attention, you know that withdrawal had a significant chance of leading to someday when the Taliban was running all of Afghanistan. They've been gaining ground for the last few years, even with us there. And if you look at the various ways you could wind up with the Taliban running all of Afghanistan, there are worse ways than a bunch of cities being surrendered without a lot of violence, right? Like Syria-type civil war. That would be a lot worse. And
do you think if you were an Afghan, sort of a westernized Afghan person who was like the United States and didn't like the Taliban, were you completely apprised that this was a possibility so you could get your affairs in order and plan your escape route? Or did we do it in such a abrupt way that we're actually leaving a bunch of people stranded who we didn't have to leave stranded?
It looks more like the latter. I mean, as you know, troops are now headed back to try to assist at least in the evacuation of American personnel. But no, it's been all too abrupt. And, one question I have, I had Adam Weinstein on the Wright show. It's the most recent show before this one, actually, on the feed. He is a guy at the Quincy Institute who specializes in Afghanistan and served as a Marine there. And I asked him a question that I don't think he had thought about, but I kind of wonder, Afghanistan has this fighting season thing because of the weather. They basically fight from April to October.
Right.
Well, what I wonder is, might it not have been wise for us to time the withdrawal and the announcement of the withdrawal? So it's like we announce it and then do it and suddenly it's cold, right? Like it kind of frees the action about the time our troops are leaving. Best case scenario is that gives a whole winter for the government to contemplate the fact that they really are alone and have to figure out how to deal with this. Worst case is as a surely political matter, it creates some temporal space for Biden, between withdrawal and all hell breaking loose.
That was the Henry Kissinger decent interval theory in Vietnam. Which I think he denied he had, but everybody else was convinced he did have. There should be a decent face-saving interval before the government collapses.
Sure, any president would want that at a political level, but it could have had actual virtue. For example, just in the, even when it's wintertime, you can leave Kabul if you want to, right? There are ways to get out.
I think that's the key virtue, is it would let people get out. But obviously the Taliban wants us not to have the face saving. They want to rub our face in it.
But what's interesting, I also think this is just testifies to what a ridiculous shell this whole thing, what a facade we had bought into. The fact that in so many cases it's looking like the Taliban are just they're just like making phone calls. They're like finding people who know the military commander here, and they're just calling them and arranging these surrenders, saying, okay, we'll let you, we'll get, you'll be safe, your family will be, all these people will be safe, and blah, blah, blah. And they're just doing these deals. And there just seems to me there was so little actual commitment within the military and government to the government, and among the people, so far as I can tell.
So the commander who surrenders does not get beheaded?
Well, I think it's a better deal than that. You're troops and you're this and you're that. I don't know what the deals are. But again, it's better than protracted urban warfare that leads to the Taliban victory anyway. And one thing this has shown us, I think, is that, Taliban victory is probably what was going to happen. I mean, there just isn't the will to fight among regular Afghan soldiers. The only troops that are doing much of anything are the elite troops, and they're just special forces, and there just aren't that many of them.
I'm not sure. I think there's genuine anti-Taliban sentiment in Kabul.
I think there's a lot of people who would rather not be governed by the Taliban. I'm just saying that the government was so corrupt and inspires so little devotion that for a lot of people, it's like, well, are you ready to fight to keep the Taliban out? Shit, no. I mean, there's nothing about the status quo that's worth that. The other thing is that, the government claims Pakistan is letting weapons and, fresh troops for the Taliban, in effect, across the border. I don't know how true that is, but it is a fact that Pakistan is no friend of the government because the government's leanings toward India. And, to some extent, in that sense, all along, this has been, nothing like a full-fledged proxy war, but there just are these regional forces that are just, kind of beyond our control. And it's just ultimately, it's a thing that's very hard for us to control.
Haven't they seen The Kite Runner?
I haven't seen The Kite Runner. What's the moral of the story?
It's the only anti-Taliban film I've ever seen.
Huh.
It's a novel, and it's sort of a middle-brow novel, and it's not a bad movie. But it involves making you hate the Taliban by the end of it.
One final point this guy made, Adam Weinstein, is that this is going to be a different world that the Taliban inherits since they last ran all cities in Afghanistan because of all the technology, the smartphones, everything. It's going to be much more evident to the world what they're doing. In fact, if anything, we may get an exaggerated notion of some of the bad stuff they're doing because there will be people who very much want to get it out and it will go viral on social media. But also, it's going to be, at least initially, harder for them to tamp down, dissent and stuff because of this technology. Now, in the long run, don't say I didn't call this, but in the long run, China is going to want to do business with the Taliban because they want to make sure that Muslims in their West, including the Uyghurs, cannot use Afghan territory or people in Afghan synergistically, people who might be sympathetic. So they're going to want to get on board with the Taliban, and I'm sure they're going to be happy to provide them software, the Taliban, with software that helps them crack down, notwithstanding the changed technological landscape.
But why wouldn't the Taliban try to foment unrest in the Muslim areas of China?
Because that's another thing Adam said, is like, they're very inward looking. They don't have aspirations to conquer the world. And for the same reason, it doesn't bother them that much when foreign nations refuse to recognize them because they're so barbaric. They want to govern Afghanistan.
What?
And they're not like ISIS. They're not like Al Qaeda. Now there's reason to worry about whether they will do business with Al Qaeda, but, because Al Qaeda does still purport to want to inflict terrorism on the United States. But he said the Taliban are a very inward looking movement.
But, I don't know. It just seems to me, if Al Qaeda was, in Afghanistan before, they do have global ambitions, and maybe they will stoke them from that territorial base. And what's China going to do? They're not going to invade Afghanistan. They're going to be the third great power to lose a war in Afghanistan.
So you're imagining Al Qaeda
I just think
doing business with the Uyghurs?
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. Now, the Taliban are very anti-ISIS, by the way. They'll fight them. That's an interesting scenario. But look, however inward looking they are, they're going to need some friends. And they may have one in Pakistan, but China is a natural because of what China wants from them and because of, China's tension with India one thing you'll hear if this happens and the Taliban, become kind of close friends of China's is that, oh my God, Biden has ceded, Cold War type rhetoric. Oh God, now China has Afghanistan. It used to be Russia. Oh no. Personally, I don't think that's a big
China's way of influencing people is usually to get them hooked on debt through the Belt and Road Initiative. Does Afghanistan want a lot of civic and public works paid for by China? Or are they happy to be at the level of economic development they're at?
I think the Taliban is going to want whatever will help them secure rule, and probably in some cases that would be infrastructure. I don't know, but I'll bet it'll be some authoritarian software. But again, I don't think that will reflect China having some grand design to spread authoritarianism everywhere. It'll just be what the Taliban wants, and China will want things from the Taliban, and they'll do business. But we'll see. I mean, I'm looking pretty far ahead. It's, Kabul hasn't fallen yet. We'll see, but it ain't looking great.
Infrastructure quickly?
Sure.
Well, as you know...
In fact, that was a great segue. You didn't realize what a great segue we just did. China, Belt and Road, Taliban, infrastructure, infrastructure.
We're nothing if not seamless.
This whole thing is planned in advance by a team of highly paid professionals.
Well, as you know, the bipartisan infrastructure bill passed the Senate, and the Senate also passed the framework for the Democrats-only massive welfare state reconciliation bill, and both those things now go to the House. The reconciliation part, Pelosi's holding up the bipartisan bill until you can do the big reconciliation part. And the reconciliation bill, not only does the framework have to be passed, but all the details have to be filled in. So it's like a two-part process. My great hope has been that the House moderates, Pelosi can only lose 3 votes in the House. The House moderates, who are more than 3 votes, or at least 9 votes, but they're probably more than that, would show some spine and say, sorry, you want our votes, you have to do X, Y, and Z. But my hope is that they'll start throwing crap out of the Democrats' only bill, so that they'll throw out the child tax credit, they'll throw out the immigration amnesty, they'll maybe throw out a bunch of other ill-considered provisions.
Although those 2 things alone would make you ecstatically happy by themselves.
Yeah, if they did that, I wouldn't care about the rest of it, frankly. Yeah. The rest are just a huge waste of money. But, or as a friend of mine put it, it's just gunk. It's just liberal gunk. It's not like we are passing Medicare. I think I've made this point before. Or we are passing Social Security. It's we're giving a few hundreds of billions of dollars to 5 or 6, liberal projects that don't have the impact of even Obamacare.
But I heard it includes an expansion of Medicare, but I didn't hear what they meant by that. Is that true?
I think it means dental and some other benefits.
Hey,
and
don't dismiss that, buddy.
I'm not dismissing that, but I would. There's also talk about lowering.
That would make me super happy because I'm headed toward Medicare at an alarming rate.
There's also talk about lowering the Medicare age. And that part is not going to happen, we don't think. But they're going to make some efforts at doing that. But everybody thinks that's going to go by the boards. And David Dayen of the what is it? It's whatever American Prospect, whatever Kuttner's magazine is. He seemed to think that the Medicare parts were doomed to be thrown overboard.
Oh man. I want that dental.
He was comparing what was in the Biden 1-pager versus what was in the 3-pager, and he was assuming that anything that's in the 3-pager that didn't make the 1-pager was doomed.
So wait, at last check, weren't 9 moderates explicitly demanding that they vote on the infrastructure bill before they do the other stuff?
Correct. And they were sort of goaded by Punchbowl and which is this Capitol Hill reporting outfit that I follow, saying, "Oh, you people are always wimps. You're always writing stern letters, but you're never actually doing anything." Unlike the Freedom Caucus, which actually did screw over their party leaders. And so now they seem to have some spine, and my great worry is that they're showing spine in the wrong place. In other words, I want them to show spine throwing shit out of the reconciliation bill, not demanding that the bipartisan bill be brought first. I mean, is it conceivable that if Pelosi doesn't get her infrastructure bill, she will actually torpedo the bipartisan bill? I don't think it's conceivable, but
that's her claim, right?
That's the implicit threat. I don't think she's claimed that, but maybe she has claimed it. But it's inconceivable that
the left, a number of people on the left have said that's their position, right?
But I don't think Pelosi has said that, and it's obvious that some reconciliation bill is going to pass. The question is just what's in it, and. So I worry that Pelosi is going to go to these 9 people and say, "Okay, I will cave on bringing up the bipartisan bill first, but you can't give me shit on what's in the reconciliation bill." That would be my nightmare, and that they will accept that. So this is that's my paranoia of the day.
Yeah, that seems. I mean, my paranoia is the opposite. That once the infrastructure bill is passed, the reconciliation bill could just fall apart amid squabbling.
See, but this is why that's not going to happen, because suppose they squabble and suppose the moderates succeed in taking out half of the reconciliation bill. Suppose it's the half I want them to take out. Okay, the half that the liberals really want, child tax credit and a big amnesty. Okay.
For example, just to take 2 examples.
For example, and suppose they cut everything else in half, okay? Is AOC going to torpedo it? No, she's not. There's too much in it that too many liberal interest groups want. Half a loaf is progress for the left. And so they really have no leverage, very little leverage here at all. They're not going to tank the child care subsidies.
Why can't it work in the other direction that, the left, I mean, why are you assuming the leverage winds up being with the moderates? Because they're the ones who want to take shit out? There's nothing that the left wants to take out?
No, there are things the left want to take out, but they don't give a shit if the whole thing passes or fails. So they say, okay, we've taken our shit out, take it or leave it, and AOC has to take it. Whereas if AOC says take it or leave it,
aren't there things in there that the moderates like? Why are the moderates so willing to let the whole thing die? Aren't there things they'd really like to brag about?
Right. Well, that's why that's the theory.
I mean, fucking dental, I'll tell you, if you showed me a politician who kept me from getting dental I don't yet quite have Medicare, but who kept me from getting dental, I would fucking assassinate him. Not only not vote for him, man. That's serious shit.
That's the theory is that's why they want the bipartisan bill, so they can say, okay, we torpedoed the big bill, but we still have this little mere $1 trillion bill, and that they can boast about that. But you make a good point, but I just don't see the Democrats' only bill, mountain of gunk, reconciliation bill having exactly the sort of traction that you assume. That's why being specific, in other words, saying this bill is about lowering the Medicare age, or this bill is about guaranteeing child care to everybody. If there was something, there has to be something that really makes not just we're going to spend $1 trillion on child care, but guaranteeing child care to people. Mm-hmm. That might make them so pissed off that if anybody sabotaged that, they would take it out on them. But just saying, hey, we're spending a couple trillion on child care, I mean, so...
Well, I will say that, like,
from a PR point of view, it doesn't seem to have...
I think if you look at the game theory, it's definitely in everyone's interest to pass a version of the reconciliation bill and in no one's interest to completely torpedo it. But the way things get sabotaged, even when the game theory logic points that direction, is that another part of game theory is making credible threats during the bargaining process. And sometimes people just get locked in by publicly making a threat. Like, if you take this out, we're walking, and then it's just hard not to walk. And that's one way this could fall apart.
I was thinking it's time for the modern Democrats to throw the steering wheel out the window.
Out the window, yes, exactly. That is the famous, Thomas Schelling's famous example of a credible threat. Game of chicken, two cars are headed toward each other. Which one will swerve first? If you throw your steering wheel out the window in view of the other driver, you have made a very credible commitment to not swerving. That's what we need here.
The other dynamic at work is, of course, the midterms, and it looks very, very bad for the Democrats in the midterms. I mean, they're running on amnesty, welfare, inflation, crime, critical race theory are arrayed against them. And for them, they say, well, we're lowering some healthcare costs. And I'm sorry, that's even they realize that that's a loser rebuttal. So we're in a situation where they if they think they're doomed, they will just pass as big a bill as possible because they know it's their last chance before the Republicans take over. And so I call this the stupid name for it, but the seppuku problem. They're in a suicidal situation, and they know they're cannon fodder, they're going to die, and the only question is, what do they accomplish before they die? And so if you are a Republican who doesn't want them to pass as big an infrastructure bill as possible, you want to give them hope. In other words, it's time for the Republicans to somehow let up on these moderate Democrats and let them think, hey, I might win. If I just water down this bill enough, I might survive. Individually, I might survive, even if my party loses the majority. And so you want to somehow get the message to the Democrats that, hey, our candidates really stink. It's really not that bad for you. You might actually pull it out. And I don't know how they do that, but that's clearly what is in order.
I don't know how they do it either.
Somehow talk down yourself. Well, there's a long tradition of talking down your chances. It's not that much, doesn't happen that much in politics. It happens in sports all the time. But,
yeah, I wonder why more athletes don't do it. It's like they always minimize their injuries. I'd be like, yeah, my knee is just toast, man. I don't know how I'm going to make it in this tennis match. That would be my strategy.
And nobody ever does it in politics because of the Rove bandwagon theory that winners win. People who seem like winners win.
Yeah, I think in retrospect, maybe the mistake we have both made throughout our careers is to not claim that we were winners, Mickey. But, we've been going like well over an hour. So we need to, maybe we should say a word about Cuomo and then head to the Parrot Room.
Sure. Cuomo, I have two obvious points. One is the reason he quit is because he doesn't think he's dead. He thinks he can make a comeback if he quits now.
He is kind of acting like it.
And he got Chuck Todd to say, he can make a comeback. And point number two, the case against him isn't the horrors in his Chamber of Horrors that have come out so far aren't that bad. He's not Harvey Weinstein.
He's not Harvey Weinstein.
And the media is doing a disservice to the victims of Harvey Weinstein to pretend that they're similar to the victims of Cuomo. It's
Weinstein. This is why all other people who spell their name that way now pronounce it Weinstein, because Harvey is Weinstein.
Okay. Anyway,
now I will say that the woman who had been identified as administrative assistant number 1 or something. Did you see her interview on CBS?
No.
Well, again, you're right. It's not Harvey Weinstein because after he grabs her breast and she just kind of, walks away or something, he lets it go at that. Whereas Harvey Weinstein would be like begging and pleading and standing between her and the door and all this shit and saying she'll never work in this town again.
Right. There's the she'll never work in this town again, and it's a threat he made good on.
But he destroyed
when you hear that careers of women who wouldn't sleep with him. That's a level of evil beyond what Cuomo
beyond
was accused
Cuomo.
of.
That said, that interview was not very good for him. And I kind of looked at it and thought maybe this is what pushed him over the edge toward resignation. He just realized this is going to go on for a long time.
Right, but I think he also realized that it's not so bad that people will never forget it. In other words, 5 years from now, they say, well, yeah, he had to quit. What was that all about?
He's 63, Mickey. I mean, 5 years, he could, he'll be in, his faculties will still be with him, but,
he won't have Medicare dental. He'll have to pay those bills somehow.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
I mean, that is probably, I wouldn't forgive him for this, for Medicare dental, but I would have to think about it. I got to say.
His political position, like, as I think I said, is not that bad. He's just a horrible person.
I don't know. I just don't, I don't really see it. What does he do? What does he announce he's running for? And why does the media see? I don't think in 5 years is the media going to be, forgiving and forgetting. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to give him the time of day.
Ambassador Cuomo?
Yeah, but exactly. What president wants that? Who wants that? That
well,
argument?
It's weird. In everybody's been resurrected in the Democratic Party except for Gary Hart, who mysteriously...
Well, Al Franken hasn't been.
But I think he will be.
Well, okay, but he hasn't been.
Well, it hasn't been that long. But Gary Hart's been in the wilderness for 30, 40 years.
Well,
it's bizarre because what he did wasn't that bad.
Well, it was a different era.
It was a
different era. I mean, that's what's funny is that in one respect, that was a more conservative era in terms of what men could get away with. Because it was just the fact that it was an extramarital affair. It wasn't at all about whether the advances were wanted or unwanted by Donna Rice. It was totally about extramarital affairs. Those are now kind of taken for granted.
Right.
So he missed his, if they could swap places in time, if Cuomo could be Hart's age and Hart could be Cuomo's, they'd both be fine, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I think people are, Cisneros, he was forgiven,
What's he doing now? Wait, what's he doing for a living now?
I'm not even sure he's alive.
He was at my, I've never forgiven him. He was at the high school award ceremony where I was, awarded the, what was it? Highest ranking male academically in the class. And he comes and gives a speech and then he left before I got my award. What an asshole. He's too busy to see me get my fucking award, Mickey.
Fuck him. So that meant there was a woman who was smarter than you?
In junior year, that she was for the time being, but I passed her. It was a totally unfair thing because she had taken calculus. I had gotten there as a sophomore and hadn't been in all the accelerated tracks. So I didn't even have to take calculus and she got a B in calculus and that doomed her. I still feel bad about that.
My dirty little secret is I switched to pass-fail in calculus.
Well, you would have been ineligible for this award. No wonder I didn't see you on the stage that day, Mickey.
I was schmoozing with Henry Cisneros in the back row.
Wait, you had pass-fail in high school? I forgot. I forgot.
You could take one course a year
in
pass-fail, and I managed to switch my one course from pass-fail to calculus from a course I was doing quite well in.
Yeah.
Pass-fail.
No, I'm sorry. I forgot that you went to Beverly Hills High. I thought you went to a real public school. I'm sorry. I got mixed up.
Calculus was hard.
Mm-hmm. It was
hard.
What can I say? I took it in college. Very hard. So we should go.
Okay, we have
Parrot Room promises.
We have Parrot Room promises.
In the Parrot Room at patreon.com/Parrot Room. We're going to talk about, yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I want to talk more about the Weinsteins. I mean, first of all, there's my existing, grand unified theory of Brett and Eric Weinstein, which is that they're both cranks. It's actually a grand unified hypothesis. I have a new grand unified theory. There's something else they seem to have in common now that I want to get into.
I have a, well-informed theory about what Eric Weinstein does for the Teal organization.
Ooh.
I have...
I've also heard a new theory about... I doubt these are the same theory, but I've heard a theory about what value Teal sees in Eric Weinstein, you might say.
Okay, well, we can talk about that.
Okay.
Obviously, he sees value. Right.
I guess, although I've also heard that, his title, Eric's title, Managing Director, Teal Capital, isn't nearly as meaningful as it sounds like, but go ahead.
There's Epstein news, not big Epstein news, but
Jeffrey.
Prince Andrew has been sued, and there's a nefarious incident involving a doll that has been talked about in the press.
Haven't heard that one.
We can talk about the Muscle Shoals movie, which I saw and liked.
It is good.
Quite a bit.
It's a documentary about
but
music.
I think there are important things to be derived from it.
Okay.
I want to bring up a conversation we had after, like after the Parrot Room.
Yeah.
Which I thought was useful about Trump and the wall.
That you and I had, yeah.
Don't bring it up now. And
no, it's my lips are sealed. I didn't even think I want it out there. I don't think this is fair that you're trotting out these things that I say in confidence.
No, you said we should just keep the tape running. You agreed that this would have been a good Parrot Room topic.
Did I?
Too late now. And there's Glenn Greenwald going to Rumble with his video, and what the hell does that mean?
Oh, really?
Yes, he's getting big bucks.
Leaving YouTube?
We can talk about it.
Okay, I didn't know about this.
To what extent does it involve leaving YouTube? To what extent is it just a PR stunt? He took a bunch of people with him, and they're getting big money. They're getting like mid six figures.
Who? Matt Taibbi? Is Matt Taibbi going?
I didn't hear Taibbi.
We will get into this in the paragraph.
Yeah.
Okay, so I promised.
That's it for me.
I promised I would spout confused things about the vaccine and vaccine-resistant viruses, that half-thought that was forming in my brain. I will unveil my half-thought.
I have a couple of more boring points to make about global warming and OPEC and the 1/6 Commission.
Oh, yeah. I can't get too much of that.
And we can talk about Obama's maskless party if you want.
I can't say I woke up this morning with that aspiration, Mickey.
Neither did I.
But feel free.
No, I know. I'm happy to drop it.
We'll see how much time we have. And then I have a new... Well, maybe I'll say a little more about the Best and the Brightest, the classic account of how we got into Vietnam, which I am continuing to listen to and will for the rest of my life because it's super long. And some kind of parallels between that and Afghanistan, or at least one. I don't know if I'll unveil my new theory of why, this may not be original, of one reason that we can't clear up questions of, like, the problem of consensus about what is the case. Consensus about reality, like, is ivermectin good or bad? And all these questions that America increasingly seems to remain divided on because there is no agreed upon adjudicator, no arbiter of truth. I have a theory as to why.
Okay.
It has some novel elements, maybe. So that's a lot of stuff. That sounds like a super fun Parrot Room. Plus the parrot. The parrot is there.
Plus the parrot. Okay. Who's around here somewhere? There he is.
Okay, and what is
he or she? He's of indeterminate sexuality.
They. Parrot
Okay.
is they.
That's its pronoun. Okay.
Yeah.
What's my pronoun?
Oh, there's one more. Okay, that is the end, but there is one more. There's a they related thing from the New York Times that I want to mention in the Parrot Room. Okay, sorry. Okay, kind of a not entirely graceful sign off, but I guess we're signing off.
You're going to annoy that community?
I'm going to annoy the New York Times.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, that community. Well, something to be said on behalf of the they pronoun. I'll play it both ways. I'll wind up with everyone either loving me or hating me.
Go for it.
Will do, Bird.